Dan Bostic is the artistic director for Fullcast Audio, and I met him 3.5 years ago at another workshop about audiobooks and teen listeners that Francisca put together. And he came with 2 other teen narrators, and they're not here because they're not teen narrators anymore. They're grown-ups. And he did what he refers to as the Fullcast Dog and Pony Show. And really, it is much more than a dog and pony show. And so, because it's so much fun, and because we now have a bunch of teen listeners in our midst, we wanted them to be able to come and hear Dan and David and Chelsea, as well as the rest of you. And they're going to give us a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to be in the recording studio, how they prepare, why they do what they do. Because it's not such an easy business to be in, is it, Dan? But a wonderful one.
But it's fun.
Yes. Okay, so please join me in welcoming the dessert before lunch, Fullcast Audio, Dan Bostic, David Kelly, and Chelsea Nixon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I use this one?
You can use whatever you like.
Awesome. Hi. Come. Sit. Well, I want to thank Sharon and Liz and everybody here who's welcomed us. We love doing what we do. We're exhibitionists. We like talking about what we do. We like showing backstage what you don't see when you listen to the audio recording, because we think it's interesting, usually perceived that way. But we like to involve everyone in what we're doing, so you feel a part of it. So that is part of the objective of what of being here today. How many of you have heard a book by Fullcast Audio or any part of a recording? I'm not sure this is really going to work. I'll just do it this way. Who here has heard a book by Fullcast Audio? Anyone? Okay, great, several people. In brief, what Fullcast Audio does, we believe we're the only company, fairly sure we're the only company that does this. We record unabridged children's and YA books with a full cast, meaning a narrator to anchor the book, and then roughly one separate actor for each character in the book. It's a very challenging model. It is a lot of work, it is complex, but it's a lot of fun. And each recording involves a great number of people, all of whom contribute, not just voice talent, but ideas. I was having a conversation with Greg yonder earlier, and I told him that when we have 28 people helping us record an audiobook in the studio, we become a brain trust and a knowledge trust. And that means that if I, as producer-director, am not smart enough to perceive every meaning within the book, I'm usually not, then someone in our group can see a meaning that I haven't perceived. And then we get more. I'll explain it by saying it this way. First of all, I wanted to just give a little bit of interconnect between our presentation and some of the wonderful stuff that's been presented and will be presented later today. Among our objectives, among Fullcast Audio's objectives are to make the links between audiobook listening and literacy tremendously effective. And we believe the way to do that, we believe that for those links to be incredibly effective, the recording needs to be captivating. The listener must be captivated by the recording. Well, how do we do that? Well, we start by choosing a great book. And that's very important. We look maybe at about roughly 100 book titles to choose perhaps 12 to record. The book also, besides being a great book, needs to be appropriate for our full cast format. If the book starts out with 50 solid pages of narration, it may not be perfect for our medium, because our medium is multi-voice and our medium is, to a great extent, dialogue-driven. So that's part of it. When casting a book, we need to come up with the best voice for that book. If it's a third-person book, that's one set of challenges. It's not a specific character. If it is I've decided a third-person book. If it's a first-person book, the character, of course, is telling the story. And that becomes a particular challenge, because when I read these books myself, I record them in my head, meaning I hear a pretty specific voice for each character, starting with the narrator. And that paints me into a corner. I must find, in reality, every one of those voices that I hear in my head. It's not easy. Several years ago, we recorded this book, Ken Oppel's Airborne, which many of you may be familiar with. It's a wonderful YA fantasy novel. And I read it, we had optioned it, and when I read it, I heard a voice in my head. That voice was not in our company of actors, and I thought, okay, I have to find the voice of Matt, the main character. And I decided I was not going to waver from exactly the voice I had in my head. And as I was in the throes of finding this voice, this young man who you'll meet now walked into my office. This is David Kelly, who will come to this microphone.
Yes, I will.
Open to page 1. And this is a remarkable moment in our company history. This incredibly critical narration, critical match between voice, personality, and text. I heard the very first moment he began to read. And when he did, this is what I heard.
1. Ship's eyes. Sailing toward dawn, and I was perched atop the crow's nest, being the ship's eyes. We were 2 nights out of Sydney, and there'd been no weather to speak of so far. I was keeping watch on a dark stack of nimbus clouds off to the northwest, but we were leaving it far behind, and it looked to be smooth going all the way back to Lionsgate City, like riding a cloud. The sky pulsed with stars. Some people say it makes them lonesome when they stare up at the night sky. I can't imagine why. There's no shortage of company. By now, there's not a constellation I can't name. Orion, Lupus, Serpens, Hercules, Draco. My father taught me all their stories. So when I look up, I see a galaxy of adventures and heroes and villains all jostling together and trying to outdo one another. And I sometimes want to tell them to hush up and not distract me with their chatter. I've glimpsed all the stars ever discovered by astronomers, and plenty that haven't been. They're the planets to look at too, depending on the time of year. Venus, Mercury, Mars, and don't forget Old Man Moon. I know every crease and pockmark on that face of his.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Needless to say, when that moment happened, I was very, very happy. And it doesn't always happen that way. I have at times found someone with the right voice who certainly does not shape text that elegantly. This, to me, was exactly the voice I had heard in my head. Matching the voice to the text, finding the appropriate voice, there are several criteria. Actually, there's a big, big equation, but I'm going to simplify it. Age appropriateness is very important to us. In many audiobooks, a young character is portrayed by an adult, a versatile actor with a young-sounding voice. Our belief at Full Cast Audio is that, for example, with YA literature, with a young voice, there is enough of a difference in the sensibility between a 17-year-old voice and for example, a 27-year-old voice, even if it's young sounding. There's enough of a sensibility difference, an experiential difference, an experience difference, that the younger voice is truly more authentic sounding. I think one of the reasons is the younger voice can potentially be closer to the experiences of the character in the literature. And we often, at many times in our history, we have backed up the experience of the character with the experience of the actor. I can give you an example. A middle grade book we recorded within the last 2 years, Football Genius by Tim Green. In it, one of the main characters was a pro football player. And in finding the actor for that character, I decided that one of the most important criteria is the quality of voice, yes. Acting skill, yes. But I wanted an actor who'd played some football. He didn't have to be extremely accomplished, but I decided if he's going to live in that game, in that story, in which football is everything. Football is a metaphor for life. If we're to accept that metaphorical reality of the book, then the character who lives and breathes that sport needs to speak with authority when he's talking about the game. And we accomplished that, and it made a difference. So it's not just simply finding the right age and the quality of voice. There's a very, very complex equation. Sometimes, and this has been mentioned earlier, I know we had a conversation about it yesterday, ethnicity and religion. If there's a specific ethnicity and region, if there's a specific ethnicity and region to the narrator or the main characters, we endeavor to find that within the actor, to bring in an actor with that ethnicity or regionalism in their voice. And then, I already mentioned experiential factors, very, very important. The other big thing, besides finding the appropriate voice, I believe, is to mine every bit of text from the book. That is to say, to discover every bit of meaning from that text. Not to add to what is there, nor detract from what is there, but to find all of it. And that is accomplished first by putting extremely talented and well-cast actors in place, and then directing them into those very subtle and explicit moments of meaning within the book. I want to give you an example of that. Why don't you both come up? David will be joined on the other mic by Chelsea Nixon. They will be reading from a book that Chelsea narrated for us. It's a book by Shannon Hale called The Book of 1,000 Days. She's narrating in first person. This is fairly late in the book. David is taking the role of the heroic character, the romantic character opposite Chelsea. And it is it's a love scene. It's a very passionate love scene. And as such, as much of the passion, I believe, that is written into the story should be reflected in the recording. So this is what we're going to dig for now. Okay, Chelsea, start at the top of the highlighted section. And this is, you're down the hall from him, you see him, and I'll try to move you into the spot you were in the recording. David did not play this role in the recording, but he's going to snap into a position now. Go ahead, Chelsea.
So it's real. It's happening. And I'm lost.
Hold on. 1 second. Let's pull this a little closer. Come as close as you can. Just a little bit.
Okay.
Be slightly off axis. Don't bear directly down on the mic. You can bring it close to you, but make sure you're speaking past it and not into it. Because when you speak directly into the mic, that's when we get those. It's a tip for everybody who's on mic. Put it beside you, but very close, and you won't get those boom, boom, booms anymore. Okay, once more, Chelsea. And the moment at which you see him, there should be a very strong emotional beat and a change emotionally in what you're doing. Go ahead.
So it's real. It's happening. And I'm lost. I went to look for Sarah, hobbling out of my room with the help of 2 canes. When Tagus came down the hallway, when he saw me, he skipped a step. He looked to see if we were alone, picked me up, hurried around a corner, and kissed me. Kissed me long. My canes clattered to the floor, my arms fit around his neck. I felt as though my whole body only now was thawing. While he was holding me, I forgot that I'm not who I say I am. That he doesn't know that I'm just Dashti. How can anyone forget? But I did. And I wish I hadn't remembered again. When we stopped to breathe, he said,
I wanted to show you something.
and pulled from
Good, stop. The moment in which you enter, you must consider the moment before. What have you just been doing? Kissing her deeply and passionately. So much so that you had to stop to breathe.
All right.
Okay, so now we have to bring the physical element into it. The physical element is your heart is beating, pounding in your chest, your blood is piping through your veins hotly, you're out of breath, you get closer to the mic, have it beside your face, but both of you should get closer to the mic because you're in very close proximity with each other. Take your time, and I just want you to proceed with more difficulty. You're encumbered by speaking because you'd rather not be speaking, you'd rather be going right back to what you were doing a moment before. Okay, so let's just take it back maybe just 1 or 2 sentences before he comes in. Go ahead.
But I did. And I wish I hadn't remembered again. When we stopped to breathe, he said,
I wanted to show you something.
Good. Moved in a good direction. What I want you to do is I want to take the same moment again and be close to the mic. I want the emotion to be very high, but the volume to be low. Proportionately, we find in a scene like this, we will get intensity by less volume rather than more volume. Let's make it believable that you're only about 2 inches from her. Ready? Same spot. Go ahead.
but I did. And I wish I hadn't remembered it again. When we stopped to breathe, he said,
I wanted to show you something.
and pulled from his belt a blue shirt I remembered well. The one I gave you, I said.
I kept it with me until your scent faded from the fabric. I should have known you when you first came to sing for my leg. I should have remembered.
He pressed his cheek against mine. He breathed in against my neck and sighed deep inside. I closed my eyes. I tried to memorize the warm, brown, cinnamon smell of his skin, in case I never smell it again.
Will you take your shirt? Will you wear it for me? Against your skin, so it carries your scent again.
Yes, my lord. Yes, take us.
Do you have a lady's maid with you? Would you like me to find you one?
No, I'd rather not have a maid. I'm fine.
Are you? Have you warmed back up again?
He rubbed my arms. Yes, I have. I'm fine, really. Actually, I'm wonderful. Just then, I felt it.
You are.
He agreed. Then he kissed me again, saying, as though my lips tasted better than candied fruit.
Don't tell. The chiefs believe I won't see you until the wedding. And you know how vigorous those chiefs can be about tradition.
He set me gently down, fetched me my canes, then ran off. I came back to my room and sat alone. I can't go see my lady right now. Not until I can stop crying.
Thank you. So now you've seen inside our process. We direct very intensively, no matter what the scene is, but this particular scene is such a romantic book in a YA novel. Somebody listening to it, as someone reading it, wants to be inside the story. You probably are inside the story. If you're enjoying a book, any book that I've really enjoyed, if it's a first-person narrator, and I'm near the age and experience of the narrator roughly, I think it's me. I mean, I think a lot of people experience that. So my stance is to make those experiences as real and intensely close to the textual story as possible, so that those listening to it stay in the story, stay deeply embedded in the story. And I think we found so far that going about it this way works very well. I'm going to, how am I doing on time? What I'm going to do is I want to show a short little video now that will take you inside our actual recording studio. We're going to look at the video called Eyes Like Stars. Now this is it's a YA book. If you're not familiar with it, it's a new author, Lisa Mancha, and it's a book with a third-person narrator, so the narrator is not a teen. In fact, it's some of the comments the narrator makes to the interviewer that speak about narration in a way that it's better than anything I've ever said about narration in our context. And I'll tell you a little bit about that narrator when this short video finishes. You will see some of the characters several of whom are portrayed by teens, and you'll see the way they interact in the studio. Let's look right now at Eyes Like Stars.
Lisa Mancha, in her book Eyes Like Stars, has created really an incredible multi-layer story. Coming of age, discovering sensuality, discovering passion, abandonment, reunion, and the theater. The theater is the matrix for this entire story.
Without calling for a scene change, she stood on a precipice above an ocean that covered everything in ever-shifting blue currents. Held aloft by all the winds of the world, Ariel reached out his hand to her, enticing her with promises, tempting her with freedom, trying to draw her over the edge. Either he didn't understand what he asked of her, or he didn't care.
He's air and I'm earth. I could try to fly with him, but I'd only fall.
To be a narrator is to be invisible if possible. So my goal is to bring as much color to the language as I can, and to pay really close attention to commas, pauses, periods, phrases, so that the person listening has no trouble understanding the structure of the sentence, to make meaning but not be visible.
What could he do? He could escape.
Despite the temperature of the water, Bertie went cold.
What did you say?
No, more fear, but it's
Yeah.
much softer.
Yeah, I was gonna say. What did you say?
She's extremely nervous about losing this place because it's literally the only thing she has. And the people she meets there, from Mrs. Edith, the wardrobe mistress, and Mr. Hastings, the prop manager, and her friend Nate, and Ariel even, and all the fairies are basically her family, and she has no idea what she would do without them.
Peas Blossom landed on Bertie's shoulder.
The idea's ridiculous.
Ridiculous in the best possible way. Can you picture him tunneling out with a spoon? Bedsheet ladder out the window?
Ophelia frowned.
I don't know about spoons and sheets, but if he tears his entrance page out of the book, he'll be able to leave the théâtre.
It's been really a great piece for actors I've loved directing it, and the actors are having a blast.
Thank you. Cynthia Bishop, the narrator you saw, reading and talking about what she does, she is a career children's librarian, as well as being a storyteller and a narrator. What I loved about what she said is it shows how dedicated we remain, and we believe we must remain, to exactly what is on the printed page. That means that the very structure of what is on the page is terribly important to us, because we are channeling the act of reading so that everyone gets the experience not only of all of the story information, but exactly what the author has put down on the page, because it's all terribly important, how the structure of the sentences and the paragraphs are put together. But it comes together into, it is often part of the intent of what's written. So that, I love the way she made that point. But there you see inside our studio, and you see how the different people interact, and how each voice has to be chosen to be fit to the character, and the voices have to be chosen to be varietous of texture, of pitch, of rhythm, so that when you listen and you listen to our text, the only thing we take out of the text in cooperation with the author and with the publishers are attributives. We take out a lot of the he says, she screamed, that is if she screamed. Because we don't need all of those. Those sometimes can interrupt the flow of dialogue. But if we do, what we take out must be incredibly clear, or we have failed to convey something about the book. So that tells you a little bit about us, part of our mission, why we feel it's very important, particularly with YA, to have the fabric of the recording depend heavily on voices such as are springing from the story, teenage voices. And they are, incidentally, for the record, they are still teenagers. They're still in that spot. And David said, oh, should I read it like I'm 14? He was 14 when he's 18 now, when he first narrated it. And he, just by simply respecting the text, which he does tremendously, he believably sounded that age again. He did to me. One thing that Sharon asked me to touch on, and then I'm going to open to questions, is, how are we on time?
We have about 7 minutes.
Okay, so I'll be quick about this. You asked me to touch on music, and I'm going to do it very, very briefly. Like you told me about yourself, Sharon, when we first started recording our first audiobooks, we tended to stay away from musical usage, certainly any music touching the text. And we have adapted and evolved also. Because what we have found is that, well, these are our credo. We feel music must spring from the text, as everything we do must spring from the text. So we compose all of our music. We compose it according to exactly what's happening in the story, and sometimes in cooperation with the author. We also believe that we must only support the text and the story, not augment it or distort it in any way. For example, something happens in the narrative text, and the narrative text gives you the full experience of what's happening. It isn't necessary, in fact, I believe somewhat destructive, to put a musical phrase that does the same thing underneath it. If the text is powerful enough to give you everything, we don't believe there should be anything there but the text. And in general, as I said, not underscore that text. What we have found, though, is that at times we can support and clarify something that's happening, particularly in a large, long narrative sequence, by underscoring text. I recommend to anyone who loves books, YA literature, and or audiobooks, take Airborne out of your library if you have it, and listen to it, because it's extraordinary. You'll see examples of everything that mentioned here, as well as you'll hear David's narration, and you'll hear how we've, in that one in particular, woven some music underneath some long passages, which, as I said, in past years, I was against it. I believe the way we've used it in that story supports what is happening, clarifies it. Perhaps it might intensify it, but it works in harmony with the text. So that is our feel about music. We have evolved, as Sharon said she has, and as other people have told me. But still, the most important thing to us is always the text. All of our cues as to what to do come from the written text of the book. And then our other guidance comes from our listeners, students, parents, librarians, teachers. So if you have guidance you want to give us, go to our website and send us advice. Give us your opinions. We listen to it all, and we want to be guided by it. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have about us and what we do. Yes?
What is the time frame from the selection of the book and how much time do the actors, if you will, have to practice from when you choose the book to the end?
It's tough for me to give you a timeline from choosing of the book to the end of the process. It's because sometimes we will pick up a book and decide on its release date. We may decide on a release date for strategic reasons that's very near or very far away. There isn't a fixed interval. However, I can give you more concrete information about recording a book. Eyes Like Stars, for example, is going to be, I believe, 8 hours as a finished recording. As an 8-hour book, it will require, I believe it required 3 full rehearsals prior to recording, where we read through the entirety of the book from beginning to end, broken into 3 sessions. In a difficult way, but we feel an important way. We work on the book sequentially, from page 1 to the end page, because that, I believe, is the way to shape the story correctly. And then we move into the studio, and it required 8 studio sessions. So that was about a 2-week, little over a 2-week process from beginning rehearsals to finishing the main recording. And we usually require about 3 or 4 months per project of post-production. So it all fits from initial casting to release. It probably fits usually in about a 6-month time frame. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you choose the actors?
Well, we're well known in our community now. So young actors, adult actors, people who find out about us, when they find out about us, they'll contact us and they'll say, I'd like to audition, how do I audition? We sometimes, if we're looking for specific voices or groups of actors, we will put an ad in the paper announcing an audition call and rent a local theater and have people come in and audition for us. I discovered one of our most talented voice actors. I went to the grocery store and he was working the checkout. And he said the following words to me: "Did you find everything you're looking for?" In such a deep and compelling voice. I said yes, with a double meaning. The second meaning was I had been trying to cast a young male character, and the voice I heard come out of him was the exact voice. I had no idea if he was an actor, no idea if he had performing experience, no in both cases. You and I, Sharon, talked about the title Graceland. It's a very important book in print by an extraordinary new author in YA. He was cast as the male lead, an extremely important role in YA literature. And so far, there are people starting to fall in love with him when they hear the recording. So all sorts of methods. I have listening all the time, but we do sometimes conduct auditions. People are recommended to us. There's no one way we find voices. Often people approach us and say, I'd like to be heard. We listen to them, we record their voice, and when an opportunity comes up to cast them, we contact them. Other questions? Yes?
I'm very interested in Melting Stones because, as I understand it, the author directed it, the full cast audio production came out before the book. How did that all transpire?
Well, Tamara Pierce is a very good friend of ours. She's a good friend of my business partner Bruce's, and they work together on each other's books. She wanted to invest in us in some way, and she decided to write a book for us. So she said, I'm going to take popular characters of mine and write a new story for them, and I'm going to write it for audio only, a fiction format for audio and not for print, which had never happened before, ever, in the history of publishing or audio publishing. And Scholastic, her principal publisher, caught wind of this, and they whined, and actually threatened her. She said, they said, your print fans you're going to be in deep trouble with them if you don't give them a book to hold. So what we decided was, she decided we would record the audiobook, and then 1 year afterwards, she would give Scholastic the rights to put the book into print, so that the book would live in audio for a solid year prior to the print release, and that had never happened. She did direct it. In fact, another interesting thing about the book, she wrote several of the characters for specific actors in our company, which is extraordinary, to play a role, to essay a role that has been created for you by someone like Tamara Pierce, as well as the fact that during the production, some of the actors contributed their input. They said, Tammy, I know that you have him saying this, but I don't think he would say that. And she would say, okay, well, what do you think he would say? She would hear the actor out, writing all the while in pencil in the manuscript, and then she would say, okay, say this. So that by the time we'd finished the audio recording, the manuscript had changed, and had been guided by the input of some of the actors. And we were deeply moved emotionally when the book came out in print and we received our first copies. She dedicated the book to the full cast actors. She said, it is theirs as much as mine. So the investments that we all make in each other are tremendous. We are deeply grateful that she did that. It's a wonderful book. And she brought characters to life for specific actors. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Probably very close to end time. Thank you very, very much for your time. It was great to be here with you. And, as I said, if you have anything you want to ask us or comments you'd like to give us, you can go to our website, and I see every single one of those emails that comes in. Thank you.
I'm going to try your trick. Thank you very much, Dan, and they've vanished.
They have.
There they are. Well, there's Chelsea anyway.
Well, thank you, Sharon, and welcome to our team panelists today. Thank you for being willing to come and share your experiences as audio listeners. I have just one quick story to tell, and it's also about Melanie and her older brother, Darren. They used to come to the library and continually ask for us to get audios in our teen area. And I like to listen to what the teens have to say. We like to do, the things that they think are good for our library. But we were struggling along, and not long after, Sharon became head of Youth Services, and we now have a very nice audio collection. So thank you to both of you. So I'm honored to share the stage with library media specialists from Craig and Parker High School. They play a vital role in the development of literacy skills for the students of Janesville. So, panelists, I'll read a question, and if you could just signal to the librarians, raise your hand just a bit, and they'll give you a microphone. And please give your first name only, and then share your response. So our first question today, what do you listen to on audiobook? Are there certain types you prefer? One of the teens mentioned liking to listen to the full cast. Are there certain things you listen for in a narrator, things you like or dislike? So why don't we start on this side? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Colin. I like to, when we were listening to Stop the Train, I listened to it with the rest of my family on a vacation that we were going on. And it was really good to hear the full cast and all that they said, because then you got the full experience of that there are different characters in the book with different personalities, and it's not just one person reading, just reading out of a book.
Anyone else?
What do you?
I'm Carly. I like to listen to fantasy stuff, and I like it when the whole cast is reading and they don't change the cast in the next book, because then they might pronounce the name wrong or they do something wrong. And I like all the fantasy stuff. That's cool.
I'm Rebecca, and I like to listen to the full cast stuff too, so I can get all the different feels of the different characters. And if I'm not listening to the full cast thing, then I like to listen to it when we're in the audio, because the narrator is very dramatic and conveys all the different feelings very well.
My name is Melanie. I like to listen to fantasy and the same sort of things that I like to read in print, but one thing that I like to listen to specifically is the classics, because when you have a report due or something and you have to read a classic book, sometimes you get caught up on some of the harder words, but when you're listening to it, you can get past them and get the full understanding.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. When do you listen to audiobooks?
Hi everybody, my name is Arbrasia, and usually when I listen to a book or whatever, it's probably when I'm driving somewhere far, because at Northville, my orthodontist is in Madison, so instead of listening to music or whatever, I just listen to a book, and probably when I'm cleaning my room, which takes me like an hour and a half.
Our family, we listen to audiobooks as a family when we go on vacations, because usually every year we take a vacation out into Utah and we go through the mountains, and Mom doesn't want us to watch our videos during that time because the mountains are really beautiful. And so we listen to audiobooks as we go through the mountains, and it's really a really good like family building experience, because we all understand the books, and my mom's really good at picking out good books that are interesting for my little brother Sam, who's 7, and my older brother, who's 17. So she's really good at that.
Hi, my name is Kim, and I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm traveling or cleaning my room or something, or when I'm at school, because it just helps me better understand.
Hi, my name is Emily. I listen to audiobooks like if I want to get out of the real world and just go into my fantasy world, which I love. And I can't. And like if my mom calls me down for dinner, I'm like, wait, I want to finish this. So it helps me think better too, and it just gets me out of the real world when I want to live my fantasy.
I like listening to books when I have nothing else to do, because then I have something to do. Or when I have any breaks, or when my mom wants me to work in the house, I go to my room and say that I clean my room, or not really. And I mainly listen to them in the summer because I don't have as much time, but I'll listen to them when I get home from school or in the morning.
Hi, my name is Samantha. I multitask when listening to audiobooks. During the school year, I'm able to do like math homework, which doesn't require a ton of thinking. So then I also listen to my audiobook while I'm doing my math homework or other worksheets. And over the summer I listen a lot because it's my job to keep the house clean. So I will clean the kitchen and listen to an audiobook, or fold laundry and listen to an audiobook, and that's really nice. And also when we go on vacation a lot. So we went out to Colorado and listened to a Kenneth Apple book. So that was very fun.
We like to listen to them in the car a lot too. I have 5 other brothers and sisters, so it's fun to all be able to listen to a book together. And also when I'm folding laundry or doing dishes or any of that stuff, I like to listen to them.
Hi, I'm Isaiah, and I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm in the car or when I want to just go in my room and hang out. I usually just listen to audiobooks.
Our next question, I think we covered where some of your favorite listening spots are, so we'll go on to the next. Why do you listen to audiobooks? Some of you mentioned some of the reasons why you might like to listen to audiobooks. Does anybody have? Okay.
Well, being a teenage girl, it takes me a little time to get ready in the morning. So I just turn on my audiobook, and while I'm getting my hair done or whatever it is, I can listen to my book. And being a senior in high school as well, like, you have so many other books that you're reading. But when you have an audiobook, you can just put it on and you can do other things while you're doing it. So on the way to school, getting ready in the morning, everything like that.
I enjoy reading or listening to audiobooks because it adds another level to the depth of the book, because you get a certain level out of the book when you read the book. And it's different than watching a movie because you can hear the characters' thoughts generally. But it's not, there's different things that are good about each one. But audiobook finds the happy medium in the middle, that you can get the character's thoughts, but you can also understand it, hear the inflection in the character's voice, that you can picture it better, almost.
I like to listen to books that are kind of slow in some parts on audio, because there are a lot of really good books that are very slow in some parts. So it's easier for me to get through them if I'm just listening, so I don't have to make my eyes read every word. So I like to do that. And I also like to listen to books that I absolutely love, so then I can do different things at the same time and just be listening to them over and over again.
I like listening to audiobooks because it motivates me and it gets me going somewhere else, and it's fun because I don't have to read and I don't have to understand as much, because I can understand it when somebody else is reading it to me, because it's easier for me to understand something even if my mom or dad reads it to me.
All right. Then how do you listen to audiobooks? Do you have a favorite way that you listen to them?
I try to do everything because I do downloads, CDs, MP3s, I check them out from the library. Anyway, there's audiobooks available, I usually have them.
Well, I originally started listening to audiobooks when Sharon approached me about joining this club because I really liked reading. And at first I was really didn't know what the audiobooks was or what they were about. But then I started listening to them and I really liked them. And so now I like to check them out from the library, because then I can come and talk to Sharon and see if she has any input about what's the best ones to listen to or read.
My mom will get books that she really thinks are really good and let us listen to them on audio. That's one thing we do. Or I listen to them on my iPod a lot. I have my dad download them from our CDs and then listen to them that way.
I also like to take the audiobooks and download them onto my iPad. That way I can go like walk the dog and still be able to listen to a book, and it can go with me everywhere that I go, even if it's just a short car ride. But then I have to remember where I'm at if it's on my iPad.
I listen to audiobooks on the iPod because, you know, batteries die and we just don't like to go buy batteries all the time. So I just listen to it on the iPod or on the computer or anywhere that I can. So
Well, we'd like to open it up in case any of you have questions for our teams.
There's one question at the end that I was looking forward to hearing the answer to. As a librarian who hasn't, I didn't give this much thought to these audiobooks. I just thought, oh, you can't do that while trying to audio. Now today I'm going to go home and look at audiobooks. But do you think it's important to read along, or not necessarily? Or?
I have read along in a print edition with audiobooks, and if you like to see things, if you more learn better when you see things, it's easier because there's the different learning styles. It's better for like kinesthetic learners to read the books out loud, and there's better for certain people that learn by looking to read the print edition and goes by hearing to listen. And it's a good thing to do because sometimes they take some words out that they aren't important if you are listening to the book, but if they are, if you're reading it, and it helps with your grammar if you're listening to it and following along, because then you can see how the sentences are built and how they sound.
For school, definitely I listen to like the classic books that we have to read for school. Like for the Scarlet Letter, I listen to that one. That way I could also see how the word is spelled and know how to say it. That way I can be able to pronounce it and recognize the word. And these classics are definitely books to listen to for upper level reading.
I do not usually read along with the print edition. Personally, I think that I can still learn the words and vocabulary without actually seeing it because I know how it's used by actually listening to it and such. Yeah.
Can we just run through their favorites, like recommendations?
Definitely.
I love the Artemis Fowl series. Nathaniel Parker is, I think, one of the best audiobook readers. It's just pronounces everything wonderfully. It just sounds great. And I just like listening to the audiobooks that I pick up in the library. Something that looks cool.
I like to listen to JATVMedia books on audio because they can are slow parts, but they're extremely good books. So that's some of my favorites. Listen to it. And then Chronicles of JATVMedia, HENTY. And then I also really like to listen to the Chronicles of Narnia. I listen to those over and over again. And if I could find Lord of the Rings, then I would listen to those on audio.
I highly recommend Jim Dale if you have not listened to him. Yes, Harry Potter audio. And pretty much lately what I've been doing is going to the audiobook section and finding a book that I would like not normally pick out just to get a different variety. I'm becoming very open with audiobooks lately. So.
I don't have like a particular recommendation. One thing that I've read by audiobook many times is the Twilight series. I know everybody's read it, but the audiobook is pretty good, and another one that the audiobook in particular is good is The Ranger's Apprentice.
I'm a really big Nora Roberts fan. And the Twilight series too, which is pretty much, I was like obsessed with that, but I pretty much recommend any of the Nora Roberts books.
I'm also a big Twilight fan, and I would recommend any books from the Twilight series.
I'm also interested in Harry Potter and the Twilight series. I was really obsessed when I read the Twilight series. So,
I like the Inkheart series because it was really good and it was good for my level of age. And my sister now wants to read it because she always listened to it when she was in my room when I was listening to it. And it's really good. And if you ever see those books, Inkheart and Spud and Dad, I suggest you really check them out because I read them all and they're really good.
The first one you said over there, I thought the Artemis Fowl books were good ones, and it seems to be a common theme, but Twilight was a very, very good book to listen to. And I agree with that. It's also a very well-written book.
I really don't have a favorite, but I would recommend like fantasy books because I'm a big fantasy lover. And the Twilight series.
I am also a very big fantasy lover. I would recommend the Harry Potter series and the Twilight series, just because they are also really good books.
Got one comment here.
One thing about the Inkheart, it was narrated by Brendan Fraser, and as some of you might know, he acted as the main character, Mo, in the movie that came out recently, so that was really cool to see his voice like on the screen after hearing him in the audiobook. So.
I was wondering for you, did you read the book and the movie? And
I read the book and then watched the movie.
Was the movie like different? Did they take a lot of stuff out like they usually do?
I actually just watched it last night. They meshed it. They did a decent job, though.
It was decent.
Decent.
One other strong recommendation I would have as a parent and a media specialist is the Aragon series. It's very cross-generational. My family listened to it one summer, and the voices are incredible for the dragons, and so it's another very good one that you can share with an entire range of ages.
I guess my recommendation today would be Airborne. Just love Airborne, like wherever you are. So that would be one. I would recommend that along with the others here.
I don't really have a recommendation, but I kind of am like maybe Samantha, who there have been books that I probably couldn't get into, and as some of my kids over here know, I'm not a huge fantasy fan. I'm more the realistic fiction kind of reader, and so that is how I've been able to get into some of the books is by listening to them too. So that's helped me as a library media specialist know what they're reading.